There's this really common story that love hurts. And we see this repeated by people we know, in song lyrics and movies. And this idea that love hurts can seem really true on the surface. However, after 15 years of practicing as a relationship therapist and now as a relational consultant with 4 traditional published books on healthy relationships, I can tell you for a fact that this is not in line with what the science says. While there are aspects of relationships that can absolutely be hurtful, and then there are elements of loving someone that are tied to pain, such as the inevitability of loss, even if there's a healthy relationship, that's very vulnerable. A healthy relationship is not hurtful. A healthy relationship rather allows us to really thrive, to grow. It feels safe. It's a soft place to land in life. And so this idea that love hurts is kind of mistaken in the sense of what they're saying really hurts. It's not love that hurts. It's our reactions to love and intimacy that hurt. For example, some of us in a relationship self-abandon, and that's naturally going to hurt. It's going to hurt when you lose yourself in someone else. When you sacrifice yourself so much you don't know who you are anymore. That's going to hurt. But that's not love, that's self-abandonment. When you self-abandon too, you're probably going to be less likely to set the boundaries you need when things are hurtful for you. But again, it's that pattern of self-abandonment that's hurting, not love in of itself. Because you're not showing yourself love, for example, when you don't set the boundaries you need. So it's self-abandonment that hurts in a relationship. On the other side of things, when we put up walls against love, connection, and intimacy, usually out of a fear of being vulnerable, of being intimate, then we're naturally going to feel pain as well. Of course, if we put up walls, we're going to feel lonely and misunderstood. That's just a natural consequence of not letting other people really see or know us. Also, there's research that shows that disconnecting from other human beings, even if it seems like we're just being strong, is really, really unhealthy. And I mean that physically. Research shows, for example, that loneliness is akin to our, health in a negative way as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Research also shows that poor social connections and loneliness lead to higher incidence of cardiovascular issues such as heart attacks or strokes. That risk actually goes up by 16% depending on our relationships. As a culture, we talk a lot about exercise and eating well to stay healthy longer. But we still don't talk enough about how disconnecting from other human beings and thinking we can just be an island unto ourselves is super toxic to our health. And so it's our walls that hurt. It's our barriers to being known, to knowing others that really are hurtful. It's not love. And just to point out something else, yes, all couples fight or have conflict. That is natural. You have 2 people, sometimes with very different perspectives and opinions about, how they should manage their lives together. You're naturally going to have conflict. But the research shows that healthy couples, even when they argue, have 5 more positive interactions than negative. So even when they're fighting, 5 times they're having really positive encounters, such as validating the other person, actively listening, saying things like, I see what you mean, like, I'm trying to get to the compromise here. Thank you for sharing that. They're being really validating. They're being warm. They're taking accountability. Like, you know what? That was wrong of me to say. I'm so sorry. 5 times to 1, they're doing those positive things, those healthy couples, even when they're fighting. And so it kind of balances the scale. So when there's that negative comment, when they act snarky, for a moment, you can go, okay, we're just going to move past that because it's not imbalanced. Like, we have more positive. And then these healthy couples, very contrary to the idea that love hurts, they have 20 positive interactions to every 1 negative when they're not experiencing conflict. So 20 times of meeting together, it's going to be really positive, warm. They're going to act interested in each other. Hey, how was your day? That kind of stuff. And then there might be that one, little comment that's annoying, or, seeing that they didn't pick up after themselves after you asked. But the balance is so much greater in the account of positivity that it's easier to be generous and go, you know what, we all have a bad day, we all have an off moment, maybe they were just busy, because there's so much investment in the positive encounters that, the negatives don't seem so big. But of course, those numbers are very different in couples that are struggling. Couples that are struggling, for example, actually have more negative interactions than positives during conflict, for example. So, as you're listening to this, I just want to validate that you might have the idea that love hurts. You might have carried this into your relationships, and it naturally impacts the quality of the relationships you have. And it comes from an honest reason. There's a reason why you've associated love with pain. And again, I just want to emphasize, it's not love that hurts. Love is nurturing. Love is nourishing. Love is the opposite of pain. Rather, it is our walls that hurt, or it is our self-abandonment that hurts. And I totally get it. I was there for many years myself. I'm in recovery for these patterns. And, just to share a personal story, there's a song by The Offspring called Self-Esteem. And in the song, he says, the more you suffer, the more it shows you really care. And I felt that in my deepest parts. Like, I felt if I could show someone how much I would suffer in the name of love, then they would eventually choose me, and they would eventually commit to me, and we could be happy. It didn't work out that way. I had to realize that love isn't pain and detach from the situations that were hurtful no matter what. So again, if you feel like love is pain, if maybe you also have kind of felt like the more you suffer, the more it shows you really care, or the more you kind of hide in your relationships, it totally makes sense. Attachment theory really explains why we might show up in our relationships from a place of self-abandonment or people-pleasing or total sacrifice, or kind of behind walls and hiding and disconnection. Attachment theory, originally it emerged as researchers were looking at the interactions between infants and mothers, and there were 3 predictable ways that babies would respond to separation from their mother. And this information allowed us to understand that human connection is a non-negotiable human need. That's why loneliness hurts so much. It's violating one of our core needs. Just like we need food and water and air, we need connection. Attachment theory proved that it's not just pleasurable to have human connection or preferable. It's essential. And from these 3 predictable ways of how we connect with other people, we see that people can either be securely attached. This is where relationships naturally feel safe and warm, and we connect with people who are trustworthy, and we can set boundaries with those that aren't because we trust in our value. Like, that's secure connection. And obviously someone who has this sense of security within themselves and in their relationships does not buy into the idea that love hurts. That is so untrue to them. They know that that's a misinterpretation of healthy relationships. But we may develop what is called non-secure and secure attachment. And, the 2, dominant styles there are anxious attachment or avoidant attachment. And so it's kind of those 2 extremes I already talked about. The people who are avoidantly attached, they're the ones who are hiding behind walls because their core fear is of intimacy, of needing others, of depending on others. They really see that as weakness. They see sometimes relationships as a burden. And so they're on that opposite extreme. And then the anxiously attached person, their greatest fear is going to be of abandonment, of being rejected, of being all alone. And so they naturally are going to self-sacrifice because they don't want to be left alone. And they'll make up even crumbs of something, of crumbs of connection, of attention is better than nothing. And, this is connected to the sense that they don't fully trust in their worth and value. And so how this shows up in relationships is pretty extreme. And those non-secure attachment styles are going to make it seem like love hurts or relationships are suffering. But it's really the non-secure attachment style which leads to hurtful, painful ways of interacting with others. And it's completely natural. We develop these attachment styles, which we carry throughout our lives, through our earliest experiences with loved ones growing up or with our caregivers growing up. And I mean, of course, there's some people where they had a secure attachment growing up, and then something traumatic happened in their relationships, and now they have a non-secure attachment style. For example, they might have had these really trustworthy, reliable experiences growing up, but then, as an adult, their fiance, for example, cheated on them. That could lead to non-secure attachment because you now don't feel like you can connect safely with other people. And it makes sense, like an experience like that would make someone totally put up walls or totally abandon themselves in the future just to not go through that pain again. And, a lot of people, when they're talking about attachment, a lot of people I've worked with will tell me, but my childhood wasn't bad. I had a good childhood. I don't understand what you're talking about. When I start introducing this idea of non-secure attachment. And the really interesting thing is we don't have to go through experiences that are clearly traumatic or abusive or neglectful to develop non-secure attachment. Of course, abuse or neglect is going to impact the way you feel comfortable showing up in relationships, how trustworthy you think other people are, and how secure you feel within yourself, and how confident you feel within yourself. Of course, those experiences impact that. That makes sense. But on the other side, non-secure attachment really can develop just from experiences where we saw other people were not reliable or consistent enough. And this can happen for so many reasons. That's no fault of the parents. For example, maybe a person is born into a family that financially needs both people to be working, both adults to be working. And so the baby enters daycare really early on in life. And that's no one's fault. It's just a reality. But that baby can make up, those people that I thought I was going to see nonstop every single day, they're not there for me. Now I have all these strangers. I'm passed around. I don't know who I'm going to see or be able to rely upon. And of course, this is all unconscious. And, infant isn't consciously processing this, but we carry that template into our adult relationships. And I've absolutely worked with people who remember that pain and loneliness of daycare. And again, I'm not blaming parents. I'm just saying that there are predictable ways that people respond to experiences of inconsistency in their relationships growing up. And so that baby might grow up into an adult who never sets boundaries because they never want to feel left behind again. Or they might really, be someone who throws himself into work and stays single and thinks relationships are just a waste of time because they never want to feel that pain again. And both these reactions are incredibly understandable, but it impacts the way we show up naturally. And you can see this in a slide that I'm going to share right now. When you look at this slide, you can see we ideally want to be in that middle ground place. That's secure attachment. But not all of us had the childhood experiences that supported developing secure attachment, or we had adulthood experiences that interfered with the ability to stay secure. So again, on one side of things, you're going to see the person who's anxiously attached. They're going to show up as more enmeshed. That means they're going to want to be one with the person that they're with. They're going to want no sense of privacy between them. Like, for example, even their partner having their own private thought in a moment could feel like a violation to them. Or even their partner turning away at night, like, after they're cuddling, can feel like a betrayal because they want to be one with them. And kind of underneath that though, this person really feels like, I'm so terrified of being left alone. I, can't share who I really am because you'll leave me if I do. So I can't set boundaries. I can't tell you my needs. I have to hide who I am so you stay with me. And I have to take care of you so you stay with me. It's typically the secondary part. These people can show up in really strong ways for other people too. Like, I'm going to show up for you so you don't leave me. I'm going to make you need me. But there's also this unconscious, typically, or subconscious process going on where this person really believes that their partner's needs and wants are more important than their own. And so that's why, of course, they're going to settle for crumbs of attention. They don't fully believe that if this partner left them, that they'd be able to attract another relationship. But the outcome of this, of course, of anxious attachment is people lose themselves in their relationships. This is where that process of codependency comes up, where you feel like you lose yourself in a relationship, where you abandon yourself, where you people please. And that also leads, though, naturally to feeling like you resent your partner because you're hiding who you are, but you're also afraid of losing them, so you don't really talk about your resentment, but maybe it comes out in sideways, passive-aggressive ways. That's kind of typically the anxious cycle. Again, on the other side of things, it's going to be that walled-off person. They really are hiding behind emotional barriers or even physical barriers. They might, travel a lot for work and kind of be unwilling to talk about a path where they could be more in the same place as you. They're, really fueled by this belief that depending on others, even though it's a non-negotiable human need, they think it's weakness. They think that independence is the best way to be. So rather than codependence, it's like overly independent. And there's this often unconscious belief that, I have to look out for myself first. If I don't take care of me, myself, and I, then I'm going to get nothing. I'm going to be left behind. It will be awful if I don't look out for myself first. And their greatest fear, again, is intimacy, of being suffocated, of having nothing left for themselves. And, these people are sometimes called narcissists. And, it's so popular in social media now to call people a narcissist. But many people that we're throwing that term around for don't actually qualify for an official, personality disorder diagnosis. Rather, they're just showing up in an avoidantly attached way because they're so afraid that their needs won't get met by another person, because also they interpret that as weakness to need things from other people. So there's a lot of internal conflict. And again, that of course makes a relationship feel chaotic and painful and lonely. And these type of people often don't communicate openly because they don't want to need others. They think that that's a weakness. They feel like they should be able to manage everything on their own. This could be the strong one who has that huge to-do list, and their partner says, just tell me what you need from me, and they're like, no, absolutely not. And they might resent their partner. That's a natural outcome of never sharing your needs or wants or limits. But they also think that dependency is weakness. And so they'll burn themselves out, they'll be resentful, these are the outcomes. And also, they feel incredibly critical and even sometimes disgusted by their partners when they ask for things or need things. They think that their partner's being a burden. They think that they're being weak. They're like, I take care of everything on my own. You need to just take care of it on your own. And so obviously these two extreme ways of showing up, which no fault of our own if we develop non-secure attachment. There was a reason I thought that the more you suffer, the more it shows you really care. That was what my home felt like growing up, was just suffering. So I thought suffering, pain, abuse, chaos, disorganization, that was love. But of course I learned later on that was not love, it was just what was familiar for me. And so in that middle ground place, that's where interdependence lives. If you've heard that term, this is secure attachment. Here we know that we both matter equally. You're not more important, I'm not more important. We matter equally. And so when we communicate as a team. We're always going to be working towards compromise whenever possible. Okay, we only have X amount for vacation. That activity is really important to you, and this activity is really important for me. we're going to prioritize these 2 activities on our trip, and everything else we're going to kind of go really like budget. Maybe we'll find a place with a kitchenette and we'll like cook our meals, for example. That's just one silly way of showing compromise. And this is because when we're securely attached, we know our partner is our teammate, and neither of us is going to win or lose separately. Rather, we both win together. It's a win-win, or it's a lose-lose. Like, I'm not against you. Like, we're going to win together or we're going to lose together. So we're always going to stay, like, compromise together. And these are the couples naturally who have the 20-to-1 positive encounters to negative, or 5-to-1 during conflict. And here they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel respected, they're going to feel valued, and they're going to thrive even more in the world because they have a soft place to land. They don't have to kind of feel like their relationship is one of the hardest parts of life. Like, obviously that drains our energy. Obviously that's creates so many mental loops. Like, that's drains our focus, our energy, and it makes it really more difficult to accomplish our goals in life, like to start a business, to scale a business, to, stay committed to fitness goals, for example, just to, and just have a generally happy life, which we all want. And so secure attachment is the goal, but of course, not all of us had enough reliable, consistent, trustworthy experiences growing up to have cultivated that template naturally. But the really, really good news is that we can cultivate this on our own. We can become securely attached on our own, even if our partner doesn't want to do this work with us or isn't willing. We don't have to wait for them to change. We can cultivate a securely attached style within ourselves. And just to orient what a securely attached relationship really looks like, I want to explain what Sue Johnson, who developed emotionally focused couples therapy, says that a secure base is. She explains that it's trustworthy. There's trust there. There's safety. There's regular contact. Like, there's a physical proximity to your partner. There's mutual emotional accessibility. Like, I know that you're there for me. You really care about what I'm going through. My wins are your wins. My losses are your losses, and vice versa. There's a mutual experience of that, which is not true in the extremes of anxious and avoidant. And so, we're engaged, we're responsive. And so, like, that even means, like, when our partner talks to us, we put our phone down. Like, it's those little moments that really depend if we're going to have a healthy, secure attachment, or if love is going to feel like pain and disconnection and loneliness. And so that just kind of orients what we're really working towards. And we can work towards that. We can work towards relationships that are mutually safe, emotionally accessible, trustworthy. But that work really starts from within. And when we do this work, we learn how to provide ourselves this secure base. And there's all these different steps to it, but the first step is to really assess if where we're at in life is safe. So literally, secure attachment has to start with safety. We have to have safety in our relationship to have security. Like, that's non-negotiable. And I created an assessment that helps you assess your relationship safety. It's actually featured in my latest workbook, and you can access it for free with the link below. When you assess your relationship safety, you then understand kind of what your baseline is. And when you take this assessment, you'll get encouragement and next step tips to cultivate more security depending on what your score is. And I just again want to say, you can absolutely become securely attached. It is totally possible. I've witnessed many clients do this over the years. It's something I'm really proud to focus on now as a relational consultant. I do a secure attachment roadmap program with, just a handful of clients at a time. Independently, it's private, but I don't take many clients to do it, but I'm super proud of that work because we can become securely attached, and it changes everything in our lives. And I just want to close this with a quote I think is so poignant by Wendy Bahari about what we're working towards when we're working towards secure attachment, which starts from within. And I will close with this quote. A healthy relationship is a reciprocal one, whereby both members feel accurately seen and carried in the mind of the other, where both parties feel safe, and trusted, where no one has to prove their worth, where both parties graciously attend to the bids for love and understanding. And it's completely possible, and it starts from within. So thank you so much for being here. Please take your assessment to get started on this path to safety, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video. Bye.